Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome everybody to week 6. We have another London game, 9:30 a.m. and this is the PrimeTime Fantasy Football Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we help you prevail today in week 6 and the rest of the 2024 fantasy football season. I'm your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, we have another London game today. The Jaguars are playing in it. They are not the home team, but they will certainly feel like the home team with their rabid fan base. That game is in about an hour, so got to make sure your lineups are set. Got to make sure you're checked with your injuries. I need to quick look at my lineups as well. A couple bye weeks this week, a ton of injuries, a ton of questions that need to be asked, and that's what we're here for. We're here to answer all those fantasy football questions and to help you guys dominate this week.
100%. And we'll kick it off at the top of the show. You mentioned the 9:30 a.m. game. I mean, we could keep it very simple. We like our Bears this week. We do not like our Jags. We know both those defenses. I mean, Nick and I, we do our all boom, all bust team every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whenever it comes out before the Sunday slate. And Nick and I, we both agree we don't love the Jaguars in this matchup, and we both love the Bears against this defense. So just a tidbit to start the show, but definitely feel free to drop those questions. We'll give you those start sets for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fantasy relevant players in that game. Obviously, 3 wide receivers on the Bears. Maybe some people flexing Cole Kmet, and we like the Caleb Williams play. Swift has been electric. And then obviously on the Jaguar side, again, you have 2 or 3 wide receivers that are playable. Evan Ingram, I believe, is playing in his first game of this season. I don't think he played last week. Trevor Lawrence has been bad, and I think he's going to continue to be bad. So that is your initial talk about Jaguars and Bears. But if this is your first time joining the show, thank you so much. We do the Primetime Fantasy Football Podcast live show every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, available on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. We highly do recommend watching on YouTube, as we will kind of prioritize the fact that we have a little queue of questions that will be coming in. And we kind of follow that queue so you guys know exactly where you are. You could be patient and wait your turn and not spam the chat. We will get to your question so you can actually see where you are in the queue on YouTube, and we can actually pop your questions up and comments up like you're doing with Andre. He's with us bright and early. If you're watching on Instagram, thank you so much for watching us on Instagram. However, Instagram does not allow us to pop the comments up on the screen, and Instagram's actually in another browser tab. So when you ask a question on Instagram, I don't actually see it on my screen. I see your Facebook and YouTube comments on my screen. I don't see the Instagram one. So, All right, let's get to the questions. They're starting to roll in from Andre. Start Etienne or Pollard full PPR?
I'm rolling with Tony Pollard. I have him on the all boom team. I like him coming off the bye. His stats have looked great. Before that is his backfield. This is a very good matchup for the running backs. And Travis Etienne is definitely concerned. We see now Tank Bigsby getting so much workload. Tank Bigsby RB1 last week in full PPR. So that's definitely concerning for Etienne and his production. Bigsby has been the more efficient runner this year. And it's not a great matchup for the Jags, regardless, against the Bears defense. So to me, I think Tony Pollard has more of the all-boom upside.
So we're looking at Etienne, who's your running back 26 on the season. He has not scored more than 12 fantasy points in a PPR game this season, which is a little bit concerning. I'm going to look at Pollard. Pollard is running back 25, so he's right before Etienne, but he did have the bye week. Pollard has had over 15 fantasy points in 3 out of 4 games this season. The only game he didn't was against the New York Jets. It's a tough defense. The Bears defense is not bad against the run, but they're not good either. They're about 6, 9, 10, 12. They're 13th. And then Pollard's facing off against, who are they facing? Is it the Colts? No. Who are they facing?
Yep.
The Colts. So the Colts are a hair before the Bears. So I'll lean with Nick here since he is very high on Pollard this week and say that Pollard's the better start, but I wouldn't fault you if you wanted to play Etienne. If the Jags are going to win this game, I don't think they're going to do it in the air. I think they're going to have to do it on the ground. So Etienne should be the heartbeat of this offense. But again, Tony Pollard has proven to be the more reliable fantasy football back. So you might want to play the matchup here. But the Jags do also play better in London, surprisingly.
Yep.
From Stanley, Bigsby or Allen on Monday Night Football. I would go Bigsby. I think Nick might agree with me here, but you can let me know since you're the Jet fan of the show here.
Yep, I'm going with Bigsby as well. I'm starting him. Although I don't hate the Allen Monday night play because the Bills have been the worst defense against running backs. And there is a new play caller, so maybe you do see a little bit more Braylon Allen out there. But I think seeing Tanks Bigsby get that much workload and be the RB1, like it's more speculative now to play Allen or Tank Bigsby. I think has a more solidified role in that offense.
Another thing with the Allen play is that Brees is the surefire running back one, and he hasn't looked bad this season, whereas Etienne has looked bad. He's fumbled. Even he's had issues throughout his career. They had James Robinson a couple of years ago. So, all right, from Scott Green, thanks for joining the show, Scott. Like you do every week, chat is starting to fill up, so thank you guys again for joining. If you're watching live on YouTube, make sure you drop a like on that. Same with Facebook. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. We drop shows for you during the week as well. Those are not live shows, but they are drop shows, so those are available on YouTube and our audio streaming platforms. So make sure you're following us and subscribe anywhere where you would like to enjoy our content. For any first-time viewers, we do a live show every single Sunday like we're doing right now, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. From Scott, morning, guys. Full PPR. I have a tough one. Kirk Cousins or CJ Stroud? Nick, I'm letting you take the reins on this one.
Yep, Kirk Cousins is on the all boom team. We love pretty much everybody against the Panthers, but the Panthers have been like the best offense for or defense for fantasy against them. They're allowing over 300 total yards per game. They're averaging 33 points against them. That's the highest in the NFL. Quarterbacks against them. Derek Carr was the QB6 in week 1. Justin Herbert, it's a little weird because he's a run-heavy scheme, so it didn't finish that high, but he hasn't finished high any game this year. Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell combined for 22.2, which would have been the QB10. Joe Burrow was the QB10, and Caleb Williams was the QB6, all up against this matchup. So 4 of the 5 matchups have been a top 10 quarterback, and then you throw in the fact that Kirk Cousins is coming off a mini bye where he threw for 500 yards. I don't think he's going for 500 yards, but there is definitely a case where Kirk Cousins finishes very close to the top 5 quarterbacks this week with a massive stat line on a loaded offense.
I'm gonna defer to Nick here as well. Kirk's starting to find his groove. He has a great matchup today. CJ Stroud technically is a good matchup against the Patriots, but I'm concerned that this game could actually get out of hand pretty quickly. I think there's a chance that the Texans go up big, and if they go big, I don't see the reason for Stroud to throw more. Joe Mixon looks like he's going to suit up, and as long as he's healthy, they may want to get him some more reps later on in the game to get his feet more, wet and to get him back into a rhythm. So it could be more of a Joe Mixon game rather than a CJ Stroud game. So I will lean Kirk Cousins here, even though you did draft Stroud, pretty high. From Richard, Evan Ingram or Dalton Schultz, half PPR. I think I'll lean Evan Ingram here. I want to see where the Bears rank against tight ends, but they're probably pretty good against tight ends. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they allow the 8th fewest points to tight ends. The Patriots are probably bad just about everywhere.
Yeah, I want to see the stats because I don't think Dalton Schultz has really been startable at all this season.
That's my concerns, that even though Evan Ingram has a tougher matchup, I know he has a connection with Trevor Lawrence, and I know that the corners over there are going to be all over the receivers for Jacksonville. So I kind of like the touchdown upside more for Evan Ingram. The only thing that's kind of appealing for Schultz is that Nico Collins is now out. But Tank Dell is still right there, who had a connection with CJ Stroud last year. So why would Tank Dell not step right into that role? And Joe Mixon is returning, who had 168 yards on the ground week 1. I think I like the Evan Ingram play more than the Schultz play, but it is a crapshoot, and you really are hoping for a touchdown. And either of these guys could score a touchdown. I know I'm not giving the best advice there, but that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, I would definitely go Ingram just because we've seen so much more consistency in PPR. If you look at Schultz's stats across the season, here's every week score: 4.6, 4.1, 3.1, 6.4, 7.4. You need double digits from your tight end position. Evan Ingram has more of a guarantee to do that without scoring a touchdown. Dalton Schultz will need that touchdown.
All right. From the Sean, pick 2, full PPR: Jerome Ford, Tyrone Tracy, Trey Sermon, and JaMychal Hasty. So Ford is going up against the Eagles. Tracy's going up against the Bengals on Sunday Night Football. Is Singletary playing? I need to know that answer. Trey Sermon. Okay, that's what I thought. Trey Sermon is starting in place of Jonathan Taylor. That stinks for me. And Hasty, I think he's a commander, right? He'll be playing in place of.
I have to check. I don't even know that one. I'll be honest.
Yeah. And double check that one too. Okay. Okay. I have to start Ford in a league, and I'm not thrilled about it. I think I kind of like the Tracy
Michael
play.
Hasty is the Patriots' backup running back behind Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, I'm out on that one then. I like Tracy and Sermon. I like the fact that Sermon should get the bulk of the carries with Jonathan Taylor out and doesn't have a bad matchup. Then for Tracy, and the fantasy numbers might not really show it per se, but the Bengals defense has been like bad this season. They're allowing a lot of points. So, and Tracy looked good last week against my Shithawks. I mean, you had 130 yards on the ground, didn't find the end zone, but he had 130 yards on the ground. The only knock I have on Tracy is that he's not catching footballs. My knock on Jerome Ford is that, as we keep saying, the Browns' offense is one of the worst in the league. So I'm going to go with Sermon and Tracy here.
Yeah.
From Canton, thanks for joining the show. Dalton Kincaid or Dalton Schultz, two Daltons, full PPR. Nick, I know you're going to have a little bit of a knock here on Kincaid, which you could give, but I'll be honest with you, I'm still on Team Kincaid here.
Me too.
Especially with all the injuries on the Bills' offense.
Me as well. I'm concerned about Kincaid, but I just read you Dalton Schultz's numbers. He hasn't scored more than, I think I said, 7.1 in any game this year. Kincaid last year against the Jets averaged 5 catches for 36 yards. That's more points than Dalton Schultz has had in any game this year. So I'm fine with that.
And if for some reason you guys are comfortable playing Schultz, we only know so much, but you're banking on a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
So I did not know that James Cook, I knew he was a little bit banged up, but I didn't know he had a serious situation of not playing until Joe popped this question in our chat, and I had to go do some research. If James Cook does not play on Monday night, should I start Braylon Allen or Ray Davis? This is a problem for me in a league that is a 5-man bench, and I already have lost Jonathan Taylor this week. So I really hope James Cook plays, but I guess I have to go drop somebody now.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to play. He missed a few days of practice. I think he did practice yesterday, so maybe there's some upside there to him playing. But I don't even like the matchup. I had him benched when I knew he was starting in a league because I don't like the Jets matchup, and I had 2 good pivot options at running back. If he does not play, I would go Braylon Allen over Ray Davis. Ray Davis will get more of a guaranteed workload in that offense. But Braylon Allen is going up against the worst defense against the run, where I don't know how the Bills are going to move the ball if they're down Shakir and James Cook. I mean, I have no idea how they're going to figure that out against the Jets defense.
I'll agree with Nick here. I mean, I'm either going to sacrifice the matchup here. I mean, my bench is Jonathan Taylor, Brian Robinson, Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas, and then Keenan Allen. I'm going to have to drop Keenan Allen here to pick up a backup. Yeah. Or I could drop Jalen Tolbert, who I just picked up and I'm starting today, but I think I may have to drop Keenan Allen here, and that's very frustrating. I'm very frustrated. Keenan's not
hopefully if he gets rolled out, he gets rolled out by midday, so at least there's a 4 o'clock or 8 o'clock pivot versus but
Yep. All right. Next question here. Lex Plants and Trees writes, football, you're missing a T in there, but yes, it is a football Sunday. First question here, we have Keenan Allen, Keon Coleman, David Njoku, Ladd McConkey, and Michael Pittman. Need to flex PPR. First off, let's get Njoku out of there. He is on my all-bust team. His numbers with Deshaun Watson are significantly worse than without Deshaun Watson for whatever reason. On top of that, the Browns' offense is terrible, and the Eagles are actually pretty good against tight ends. The Eagles allow the 4th fewest points, 2 tight ends, an average of 4.3. And the Browns have scored the 5th fewest points this season. So me and Nick are kind of out on just about any Browns player right now. If you need to start 2 here, what do you think, Nick? Because it looks like Anthony Richardson's going to play, and that's bad news for Pittman. Keon Coleman might end up seeing.
He's going to see DJ Reed all game.
Yeah, so that's a problem. I think I kind of want to lead Ladd McConkey, but I'm a little bit worried as to who is Surtain gonna shadow or how much does he see Surtain?
He probably won't see Surtain because Surtain's not going to follow him in the slot as much, and Ladd will always be in the slot. I would guess Surtain's going to guard Quentin Johnston for most of the game, so I would go with McConkey for sure. Then my number 2 would probably be Keenan Allen. I don't love the play, but he has gotten workload when he's been out there. I think the last week he did not. But early on in the year, he has gotten the target share, and this is a good defense to take advantage of. So I would lean Allen purely off the matchup over Pittman, Coleman, Njoku.
I'm actually going to lean Keon Coleman just for opportunity. I don't know what Josh Allen's options are going to be. I know Shakir won't be in there. Kincaid probably will. James Cook might not be in there. So I see opportunity, and I see a guy who is a burner and could catch a deep ball in that game. And you really only need one. And this is the other silly thing the game that I like to play is I like having one guy in the Monday night game. It's fun to have a guy in the Monday night game say, I need X amount of points from this guy. It's fun to have something to root for. And that's not a good analysis, but I just don't like the other options. I mean, Pittman's been terrible without Anthony Richardson. We know that. Keenan Allen has looked like the wide receiver 3 over there on a team that does not throw the ball a lot. I'm looking at the other options. I'm just going to play the guy that I think has the highest ceiling, but still has a lower floor.
Okay.
All right, I'm assuming this is another league. Unfortunately, Lex has Pittman in 2 leagues. It's just not good news with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. So he has Pittman, Christian Kirk, Darius Slayton, Trey Sermon, Najee Harris, Rico Dowdle. Need 2 flex, 1 running back, full PPR. I think me and Nick both like Sermon, so we can lock Sermon into the running back slot. I also like Najee Harris. I wrote here in our all boom team that the Raiders allow the 7th most fantasy points to running backs, an average of 23.6. The Raiders also have allowed over 5 yards per rush. So I think I'm going to put Najee in one of those flex spots at least. And then secondly, I don't like Dowdle. The Lions are a very, very tough defense against the run, and the Ezekiel Elliott situation is developing over there. I feel like Zeke's going to get a majority of that goal line work because Jerry loves him. So I actually don't like the Dowdle play at all. So now we're looking at Slayton, Kirk, and Pittman.
I'd go Slayton.
I kind of like the Slayton play. Yeah, I mean, Slayton got a lot of targets from Daniel Jones last week. Obviously, Neighbors is going to be out again. I don't like the Christian Kirk play for the same reason I don't like the Brian Thomas play. The Bears allow the 6th most fantasy points, 6th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, an average of 20.5. So they're very tough against receivers. They're very tough on quarterbacks as well, and they've not allowed any touchdowns to wide receivers in the slot where Kirk does kind of play a lot. So. Are we in agreement here, Nick, or do you debate any of that?
No, I agree totally. Nailed it.
All right. Stanley wrote Danny Dimes or Josh Allen. Interesting question here. Now listen, I'm going to play Josh Allen. He's a better quarterback. He's your quarterback 6 on the year. You drafted him very, very high. I just don't see a week where you bench Josh Allen unless you drafted Jaden Daniels as your backup. I just can't trust Daniel Jones when I spent that draft capital on Josh Allen. However, I do want to give some anti-Josh Allen stats here for you guys. He's facing the Jets. The Jets allow the fewest points to quarterback, an average of 8.3. The 2 top quarterbacks that they faced this year so far, Brock Purdy had 10.3. Sam Darnold had 5.3. Those are both season lows for those quarterbacks. On top of that, Allen is only the quarterback 6 this year. He was probably drafted as your quarterback 1, though. So he is technically the biggest quarterback bust of the season so far, him or Mahomes. Last year against the Jets, week 1, Josh Allen only scored 12 points when he faced the Jets on the road. Then when he faced the Jets at home later on in the season when the Jets were in turmoil, he did score a nice 23.5. I think this is a must-win game for the Jets, though. I think the momentum is going to be on the Jets side. It looks like the Bills are really banged up. No Shakir, who is his number 1 option. And if James Cook isn't in there for dump-offs, that'll be a problem as well. This could end up working in Allen's favor for more rushing upside. But I am a little bit off Allen this week. But regardless of all the negatives I just gave, I cannot start him over Daniel Jones, even though Jones has a pretty good matchup against the Bengals. So I'm going to go Josh Allen.
So I pulled up Allen's stats from last year so we could take a look. Against the Jets last year, he averaged 255 yards, 2 touchdowns in the air, 25 rushing yards. So those numbers are very solid for fantasy. He should have a fine week. I know he obviously doesn't have the weapons he had last year, but I agree with Nick. In a game last week where he really struggled, he threw, I think, 9 for 30. It was the worst completion percentage in the Super Bowl era with a game with over that many passing attempts. He looked horrible, and he still finished with 15 fantasy points. So I would rather take that than Daniel Jones, who Daniel Jones, like 1 out of every 6 weeks, reminds us why he got that contract, and then the other 5 makes us question why he got that contract. And I think last week was a question why he proved why he should have gotten it. Without Malik Neighbors, and I know it is a good defensive matchup, I don't trust him. I still wouldn't trust him in fantasy entirely.
So Lex rode Dowdle balled against Pittsburgh last week. Detroit better against the run than Pittsburgh. I've been, on our all boom and all bust teams that we drop that episode every Friday. It is not live, but we drop it on YouTube and all of our audio streaming platforms. I kind of pick against the Lions. So this year, the Lions have allowed the sixth fewest fantasy points against the run. Pittsburgh is 3, but the Lions were number 1, I believe, before their bye. So I don't know if the bye affected it. Their average is 15.9, it looks like. Or I guess they allow 15.9 fantasy points. But again, they did play one more game than Pittsburgh. Last year against the run, the Lions were number 1. So they are a very, very tough team against the run. Kenneth Walker did actually bump that number up a little bit against their favor. But my other concern about Rico Dowdle is that there's reports this week that Ezekiel Elliott is not happy with his workload. And then it sounds like Jerry Jones almost promised him a majority of the goal line and red zone work, and Zeke's not happy about that. And Jerry has a soft spot for Zeke. I don't think that can really be debated. So I'm concerned that Dowdle's not going to get any workload within the from the 10 to the goal line at this point for a while. So that does factor into my point as well.
100%. I know Nick and I had pulled some numbers for the all bust team before about that Lions defense for running backs. I'm trying to see if I can look back at my
I was going to tell you that we should keep our notes every week at this point. And the thing is, me and Nick were starting to really like Dowdle. We had said for weeks to pick up Dowdle and looked like he was carving that role into the offense. But I am concerned about the politics of Ezekiel Elliott. As ridiculous as that feels, the Cowboys are a politically run team. And I don't mean like red and blue politics. I mean the fact that I believe that Jerry Jones has soft spots for players, has soft spots for certain coaches, likes things run a certain way. And if Zeke goes into his office and says, hey, Jerry, when we had a conversation this summer at your lake house in California, you told me I was going to get the goal line work and I was going to have 17 touchdowns, and I'm not getting that. Like, I'm just saying that Mike McCarthy feels like another puppet for Jerry Jones. And if Jerry wants Zeke to get that work, he's going to get that work. That's just the reality of it. And I am concerned about it.
I do think Zeke will find his way to get that goal line work. I agree with you there.
And again, we do like your other options more. We like Sermon and exactly. Options more. Okay. From Mark Folkman, Dontavian Wicks, if Christian Watson is out, I believe he's out. I'm not sure he's a big shot at playing, or Jamison Williams at the flex, half PPR. Are these both 1:00 games? I think they are both 1:00 games. I don't want to double check that because you will have to make that decision before 1:00.
I'd go Jamison Williams. Wicks's workload has been solid, but Jamison Williams, even though I do have him on the all bust team, that explosiveness for one play to win you a game is just, it's better than Wicks. And Wicks getting a ton of targets and he's not catching them. I saw a report that a lot of that's been because of chemistry with Jordan Love. It's been with his inability to remember the route that he's running and the timing and the spacing of it. So when Jordan Love is releasing the ball, he's not in the place he's supposed to be, which is why some of the balls have been uncatchable. It's been more of a Wicks problem. So maybe he figures it out within a week, but that's something that you figure out over the course of a season and over the course of the preseason. So if he's not getting there yet, he's not as reliable. And Jamison Williams has been electric so far this year. So I don't mind playing Wicks depending on the matchup, or depending on the other option. But Jamison Williams at this point has proven that he should just be locked in over some of the flexible options.
Yeah, I'll play Jamison Williams. We'll be facing the Cowboys defense that really has not been as well. They really should be a better defense, but they just haven't been. Amon-Ra will probably see Trayvon Diggs that might open up some opportunities for Jamison Williams. My other issue with Wicks is the issue that I spoke about on our Monday show, is that we can't really forecast the Packers offense. They're basically like tornadoes, each of those players, where they pop up out of nowhere. Jaden Reed really seems like the only safe play, and I do really like Tucker Kraft, but those other receivers just don't seem like safe plays. I will note that Christian Watson does look like he could play. They have a 1:00 game, though. The Lions are at 4, so you'll have to make this decision before Watson steps on the field. But I guess you'll know if Watson is in or out at about 11:30. All right, guys, we have a bunch of questions in the chat. If you're on YouTube, which hopefully you are, you kind of see where you are in the queue. We will not skip any questions. We will answer all of them. But just be patient with where you are in the queue. I will also note it's almost 9:00 at about 9:10ish, I'd say. We will start prioritizing any questions that do have the Bears and the Jaguars players involved. We will come back to your question. If we have to go and jump up another question, we will come back to your question, I promise. But if you have any questions regarding that 9:30 a.m. game, we do want to make sure that those questions are answered well before the show, or way well before that game starts. So from Shades, J.K. Dobbins or Rico Dowdle, and then Pitts or Kraft. I would like to know if this is PPR. I'm going to assume it is, but we're going to come back to your question in a second, I promise. Just let us know in the chat if it's PPR or not, because it will kind of affect especially the running backs when it comes to touchdown upside. From Dale Sullivan, happy football Sunday. It is a football Sunday. Hopefully it's a happy one. Lamar Jackson or Kirk Cousins? Nick, you talked about Cousins earlier, so I'll let you kind of take the reins here, but it's very tough to bench Lamar Jackson any week.
I love Kirk Cousins this week, but Lamar Jackson has just got to be in your lineup. Lamar Jackson against the NFC is incredible. I believe he's 22-1 in his career, which is a mind-boggling stat, and something good to know if you're a sports gambler. But Lamar's rushing upside, his touchdown upside every single week. The Commanders' defense is just as bad as the Panthers' defense. Lamar's consistency, like the only concern I would have with either of these is they might be up so much, either of these teams, that it's just a running back only game. Like the Falcons can say, all right, it's time to get Bijan Robinson his, because he has not gotten it yet this year. And
that never happens. I love your optimism for my team, but that never ever happens. That is not a thing that happens. They say Tyler's legs are pretty fresh. Let's get him in there.
Yeah, let's get Algier in there. They're probably missing Cordarrelle Patterson over there too.
Yeah.
And then you have Lamar Jackson, who obviously MVP last year, was dominant for fantasy every single week. I would go with Lamar. I don't think there's any week Lamar's matchup proof. I don't think there's any week I benched Lamar for Cousins at this point in the season.
I don't think there's any player I'd bench Lamar for except for Jaden Daniels, and Lamar would still have to have a bad matchup. So Lamar's quarterback 1 on the season this year. I'm assuming he was quarterback 1 last year. He has over 17 fantasy. Well, I can't use that number. He has over 18 fantasy points in every game this season except for week 2. But week 2 he had 17.4. His other numbers are 25.1, 17.4, 26, 23.6, 33.4. Lamar's matchup proof, and as much as it's great to have Kirk as your backup, this is a set it for Lamar every single week.
Lamar's also the QB1 on the year, the number 1 fantasy player on the year, regardless of we just got to confidently start him regardless.
Yep. All right, guys, again, please be patient. I'm in the queue. We have a bunch of questions. We will answer them very thoroughly for all of them. So from Shades did say this is standard scoring. I'm very happy that I asked, because that would change my thought process. Nick, I know you're a little bit out on Dobbins, so you could kind of give your points for that. I'm going to go with Dobbins because I like the opportunity for J.K. Dobbins. I like the fact that he's the running back 1 and has been used as the running back 1. Kamani Vidal is kind of lurking. Go pick up Kamani Vidal, though. I picked him up in all my leagues yesterday. But I don't like the Dowdle opportunity with Ezekiel Elliott right now. I'm worried about the Lions defense. And I'm worried about the fact that I think Zeke's going to get the goal line work. So for the fact that it's standard scoring, I'm going to lean J.K. Dobbins.
I would lean J.K. Dobbins as well. The Chargers run percentage is the second highest in the NFL. They run 53% of their plays. The only team higher is the Commanders, who run with the running backs and their quarterback. So that says a lot about how the Chargers team is built. The other teams near the top, by the way, Ravens, Steelers, Bills, all mobile quarterbacks. They're the only ones confidently over 50% with that mobility at the quarterback position. So, and there is no Gus Edwards this week. So J.K. Dobbins is definitely more of a lock to me than Dowdle. As much as Dowdle did get that workload, it's been the first week that he's gotten it. I'm happy to let him have a good game on my bench and then confidently start him in the weeks moving forward. I don't love either of these options this week, but I do think Dobbins has the more solidified role in that offense.
And the second question is Kyle Pitts or Tucker Kraft. This is tough, Nick. So I have Tucker Kraft on the all boom team. He has 17 plus fantasy points in each of his 2 games. He has 5 plus targets in both of those games, although that wouldn't matter as much for a standard league. Facing the Cardinals defense, who just allowed 20 points to George Kittle this last week, even though it does seem like a defense that's a little bit tougher on tight ends. I think with everything I just said, I still kind of sort of want to lead Pitts, but I don't know.
I have Pitts on the all boom team. Me and Nick both have Kraft and Pitts on our all boom teams. I would go Kraft over Pitts. Just seeing the last 2 weeks how much workload he's gotten. And like I mentioned about Wicks and his receiving, he has not been great for them as much as the target shares he's getting. Kraft has been great. He's been a touchdown threat. He's getting a higher depth of target. In PPR, you want the guaranteed workload. In standard scoring, you want who's going to get more yards and more touchdowns. Kraft is more likely to do that than Kyle Pitts.
All right, so I'll agree with Nick here. Kraft does seem like the better play. Okay. Joe says Darius Slayton or Rico Dowdle. I'm assuming it's PPR. I don't think he plays in any non-PPR leagues. I'm going to go with Slayton here for all the reasons that have been anti-Rico Dowdle for the first half hour of this show. Bengals defense is a nice case of Swiss cheese. It's been allowing close to 30 points per game, so I'll go with Slayton.
Yeah, I agree. Slayton last week, wide receiver 7 on the week without Malik Neighbors, going up now against the Bengals, who are a very easy matchup for wide receivers. It makes a lot of sense to like Darius Slayton this week.
All right. Bryce Long, trade Deontay Johnson, Josh Downs, Bucky Irving for Marvin Harrison Jr., Tajay Spears, and Xavier Legette. I'm 5-0. I can wait until Marvin Harrison Jr. gets his groove on. So trading Deontay Johnson, Josh Downs, Bucky Irving. Yes, you're getting the best player in that deal. I'm off on all 3 of your players at this point. I mean, Bucky Irving and Gaspard, he's still in a committee. I'm very cool with trading from Marvin Harrison Jr., just getting him in your starting lineup.
Totally agree.
There's not one starter that I see that you're trading away. I don't know if they're going to accept this deal on you, but from Dollar Bill, Darius Slayton, Dontavian Wicks, or DeAndre Hopkins at flex, full PPR. I'm kind of rolling with Slayton again. I don't like the Dontavian Wicks play at all. We were all over him last week, and then he busted. The Packers offense really just seemed to spread the ball around, and you can't really forecast who's going to get the ball. And DeAndre Hopkins is Will Levis at quarterback, and he's a wide receiver too. I just think it's a really, really bad option. So I'm out on that.
I agree. Nick and I have been all in on Slayton this week.
I would like to see what was Slayton's stat line last week. I'm going to pull it up.
I got
it. It's right here. He has 26.2 fantasy points last week against Seattle. He had 8 receptions on 11 targets. I mean, he also had 5 targets the week before. And he's played with Daniel Jones for his entire career. So I like that play. From Scott Green, full PPR. I have Michael Pittman playing. I have Christian Watson. Should I pick up Bateman or Legette? I still think Pittman's the best option out of all of those, even if I don't like any of those options.
I agree.
No Florida games are being canceled or moved that would have been announced multiple days ago.
Yep.
Standard. Okay, we got that one. Kyle Singer, pick 1, full PPR. Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir if he plays, or Romeo Dobbs. If Shakir plays, he's in my lineup. I don't think he's going to play.
I think you have a lucky situation because I would go Shakir, and if Shakir's out, you go Coleman. I think
I'm with Nick. Yep.
Yeah.
From Evan Gittleman, pick 2, 0.5 PPR. Devontae Smith, Najee Harris, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jameson Williams. Najee's been awful, but has a good matchup. He does have a good matchup. I know as soon as I bench him, he'll score 2 TVs. Yep, that's probably what will happen. But Devontae Smith has to be in your lineup every single week, so that's an easy one for me. And since it's 0.5 PPR, I will still kind of lean with the receiver. Wan'Dale Robinson is just a target gobbling machine, even with Malik Neighbors on the field. And now no Neighbors. I don't think there's any Bengals corner that's really guarding anybody. I can't believe I'm like high on Giants receivers, on this Sunday morning show, but I am. It's a little bit of a wonky Sunday night football game, but I'll bet, Nick, this is going to be a close Sunday night football game. So I can't believe I'm saying Wan'Dale Robinson, but I do like Najee's matchup. I will say that Najee's facing the Raiders. They allow the 7th most fantasy points to running backs. They've allowed over 5 yards per rush per game. So Najee does have a good matchup, but I'm going to go with Wan'Dale Robinson.
I agree. Wandale this season, 11.8, 9.8, 13.1, 18.1, 16. Wide receiver 19 on the year. I don't think
What are his target numbers? What's his lowest target number?
Let me take a look. So we're looking at. So his targets in each game have been 12, 4, 8, 14, 9, 14, and 9 coming in the season, or 14, 9 coming in, won the game without Neighbors, won the game Neighbors left early.
So you're looking at about 10 plus targets in almost every game this season. Yeah. I think he's got to be a locked in lineup at this week. Yeah, from G, sure. PPR, Tyrone Tracy or James Conner. Both players had some points last week. Tracy should have more of a workload. He said Conner gets great opportunities. He does. Cardinals are facing the Packers. I think I kind of want to lean Conner here, though I like Tracy's opportunity. My concern with Tracy is he only got like 1 or 2 targets last week. I just don't think he's going to be a PPR receiving back, and I think Conner could receive more PPR opportunities, and they love using James Conner at the goal line. So I do like the Conner play a little bit more.
Me too. I agree.
From Jacob Ringhand, PPR, Javonte Williams or Cortland Sutton in the flex. They are facing those stinky Raiders. Chargers. Okay. What do you think?
I'd go Sutton. I don't like going up against the run there. The Chargers, like I said, run the fewest amount of plays per game. That's because they manage the clock so well. They're going to do that against Denver, just like Denver tries to do. So in that situation, yes, they will want to run the ball, but it's not going to be efficiently. Cortland Sutton will have the higher upside. Javonte will have the safer floor. But the Chargers, the one vulnerability that they have had is the number 1 wide receiver for the team. They do not have an elite cornerback. And Cortland Sutton, he's not an elite receiver, but he's definitely the number 1 clear-cut option over there.
The Raiders allow the 8th most fantasy points to running backs so far this season, an average of 23.6. So I like the opportunity. I like the chance of a red zone touch.
Chargers, the Raiders.
Why? It's very early, guys. It's been a long day already. In that case, yes, I will lean with Nick here. I think Cortland Sutton's probably the better play.
Yeah.
Good morning. Pick one to start in the flex, please. Terry McLaurin against the Ravens, Chase Brown against the Giants, and then Jalen Tolbert, who me and Nick are all over, going up against the Lions defense.
I'm good with McLaurin or Tolbert. I think you have 3 good options, though.
I do too.
I'd probably.
So the Ravens, Nick, I just want to throw some numbers up here. The Ravens have actually allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers at 37.2. I am still a little bit concerned. This is the toughest matchup for Jaden Daniels, and I've stated he's matchup proof, and I'm going to keep stating that until I see the stinker. But this is the best team he's facing. I believe the Ravens are home as well. So this could be a tough matchup. Tolbert's facing the Lions, though, who have allowed the 4th most fantasy points to receivers, and they were bad against receivers last year too. So this is a trend. And Tolbert had 21 fantasy points last week. I think he had 11 targets. I think Tolbert is your least hyped player, but I think I'm kind of starting Tolbert. Maybe I have a soft spot because I'm starting him in 2 leagues, but I'm going to lean Tolbert here.
I'm starting Tolbert in multiple leagues too. I do think I'd lean McLaurin. I like the Washington opportunity here. I do. Nick mentioned the number earlier. The Ravens allow the 3rd most points to the wide receiver position. If the Commanders are going to win this game, the Ravens are going to be a hard matchup for him because they practice against Lamar Jackson. They should be more equipped than any other team defensively to guard him. Where Jaden has proven to be better than Lamar, which is, it's hard to say that obviously, but where he's proven to be more consistent through his first 5 games of the year is as a pocket passing quarterback. And that's going to benefit Terry McLaurin more. And if it does not benefit him early on in the game script is going to have to be pass the ball. So it should be Terry McLaurin has the upside of having a 28-point game in this matchup. Jalen Tolbert as the wide receiver too is not going to have that upside.
Okay. Next question here from Armando. Dak Prescott, he's a Cowboy fan. He's got that CD jersey on in his picture. Dak Prescott or Jordan Love? So Dak's facing the Lions. Jordan Love is facing the Cardinals. I think they both kind of have positive matchups here, I want to say. But the Lions, I know, is definitely a positive matchup. So the Lions, not as positive as they thought it would be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the Lions allow the 10th most fantasy points. The quarterback's 18.5. I think Geno sunk that number down a little bit because Kenneth Walker got a ton of 2 touchdowns in that game. And the Cardinals allow the 9th most fantasy points, right in front at 18.7. I kind of like the Dak play a little bit more, Nick, but I'm cool with whatever way he wanted to lean. But I like the Dak play more.
I'd go with the Jordan Love side. Love in his 3 games is averaging the 4th most points per game as the quarterback position. Dak Prescott in his 5, averaging the 10th most points per game. Jordan Love's numbers in those games, 17.4, 31.2, 17. Dak, 11.5, 14.9, 29.9 the big game, 16.7, 18.4. So Jordan Love is now had a floor of 17 points per game in each of his matchups. Dak has been under that number 3 times in the first 5 games.
Yeah, I think Dak's underperformed a little bit. He is one of my favorite stat sheet stuffers. And I just think the Cowboys are kind of reeling off that win on Sunday Night Football, and I think they could really continue to reel from that. He's starting to find some chemistry with Tolbert, Ferguson. CD wants more opportunity. I know that. So this could end up being a CD game against a very bad Lions secondary. So I think this could be a Dak game. So you could roll either way. They both have good matchups. Me and Nick have given you, takes on both sides. From Deshaun, pick 2, full PPR, the 16-man league question. We love this question every week. Romeo Dobbs, Trey Tucker, Javonte Williams, Cortland Sutton, or Michael Pittman. So who are the Raiders actually facing this week? That's the question that I need to answer for myself.
This is the deepest that the 16-man team has been in the past 3 or 4 seasons that you've.
Yeah, this is a pretty deep 16-man question.
We like it.
I like Pittman and Tucker. What do you think?
I would go Pittman and Sutton, but I don't mind Tucker, obviously.
Nick does have a soft spot for Sutton. I'm okay with Tucker because he's not facing Patrick Surtain this week, and Devontae Adams is out.
Sure.
Half PPR from Dale Sullivan. Start 2, Derrick Henry. So Henry's already in. We can go from there. Austin Eckler or Bucky Irving or Najee Harris.
Nick, go for it. You got one on the all boom.
I do, but I think I kind of like Eckler. No Brian Robinson this week. Even when Austin Eckler returned to the lineup, he seemed to get a little bit of a higher snap share than Brian Robinson. Eckler's going to catch a couple balls, a lot of dumped outs from Daniels. And if the Commanders play well enough, this could be a high scoring game. Both of these defenses have not played well this season. This could be a 30-30 game. I do like Najee this week, and I've said that. He is on my all boom team. However, my gripe on Najee is the fact that his team doesn't score enough points. When it comes to Bucky Irving, I like Bucky long-term on the season, and I think he will become the starter at some point, but he is still splitting time with Rachaad White, and it does seem like a real 60-40 split in favor of White. So I'm going to go with Henry and Eckler. Henry for sure. I'm not debating that. He's in your lineup every single week, no matter what.
Yeah.
Who do you like as the second one? Do you like Eckler as well?
Yep. I'm in line.
From Derek Just, Javonte Williams or Rico Dowdle at running back 2, full PPR. Let's start with that question, Nick. That's a good one.
Oof.
I feel like I have to stay on my brand and just be out on Dowdle at this point. I've been out on the entire show.
I would go for Dowdle in this spot just because I don't think Javonte's a good running back in the NFL. And
yeah,
Rico did get 20 touches last week. That's the only upside there for me.
It is full PPR, and I think it should be a higher scoring game. So I will lean with Nick on Dowdle here, even though I'm very concerned about the Ezekiel Elliott situation that's developing. Sure. And then for flex spots, Christian Kirk, Darius Slayton, Jalen Tolbert, pick 2. I already have Brian Thomas Jr. Thanks, guys. If you already have Brian Thomas Jr., who I'm concerned about any Jaguars wide receiver. But I will go Tolbert and Slayton here.
Yep, I'm in line.
All right, guys. So we're about 15 minutes away from the London game. So if you do have any questions regarding the London game, make sure you get them in now. We will actually prioritize your questions and then come back to the other questions. So let me skim here. Richard, we'll come back to your question, I promise. From Ernie Torres, Wershing, Tank Bigsby or Tyrone Tracy at PPR Flex, or would you plug in Kincaid starting Kraft at tight end?
I'd go Tyrone Tracy.
I like Tracy as well, even though I'm concerned he doesn't get a lot of receptions. I will still go with Tracy. Yep. Let's see. I'm looking to make sure. Okay, here's a Christian Kirk question from Jose Avalos. At my flexes, need 2. I got Darius Slayton, Jamison Williams, Christian Kirk, Khalil Shakir, and Shaheed. I like Slayton. I don't think Shakir is going to play, although I'd like to get him in there. I like Slayton and Jamison Williams.
I agree. I'm in line with that.
Okay. Looking for any more questions that can be answered before? No. Okay. So again, if you have any questions, Nick, can you please watch the chat below at the chat, at least. If you have any questions that have any Jags or Bears players, get them in now. You have 15 minutes. We'll prioritize your question. For the rest of you guys, hang tight with us in the queue. We're going to start answering the rest of those questions. So I think the next one was one here from Richard. Tyrone Tracy or Javonte Williams or Romeo Doubs, full PPR. I still like the opportunity from Tyrone Tracy with 130 yards on the ground last week and no Devin Singletary this week.
Totally agree.
I would like to see him get more targets, though. We're talking about, but I really would like to see him get more targets. All right, Jose's first question, a quarterback. Should I start Caleb Williams or Kirk Cousins? I totally missed this one. Sorry about that. The only reason I'm scared is to start Cousins is I think they're going to run all over the Panthers, but what do you think? Nick, you've been talking up Cousins, so...
You were talking up. So I had Cousins on my all boom. Nick had Caleb. If I didn't go Cousins, I was going to go Caleb. So I think Nick and I pretty much like both of them.
So why don't you give your take? Why don't you give your take on Cousins? I'll give mine on Caleb Williams, and then Jose can make his choice. I'm sorry that we're not going to agree with you, Jose, but they're just two good options. That's just the reality of it.
Here's where we do agree. We both agree that we like either play. It's just which one is the better one. So the Panthers have been allowing the top 5 points to the quarterback position this year. Panthers have allowed over 330 total yards in every game, averaging 33 points against. That's the highest in football. Derek Carr, week 1, QB6. Justin Herbert, little wonky because he has not had a high scoring game at all this season with the way that they play. Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell combined for 22.2 was the QB 10. Joe Burrow was the QB 10, Caleb Williams QB 6. So 4 of their first 5 matchups have allowed a top 10 quarterback this season. And then you have the Falcons coming off of a mini bye where Kirk Cousins played his best statistical game as a pro and his best fantasy game of his career. I like Kirk Cousins in this matchup.
The reason why I like Caleb Williams is he's facing the Jaguars defense, who's allowed the most fantasy points to quarterbacks, an average of 23.1. Caleb has 17 plus fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. And Joe Flacco, who stepped in for the Colts last week, just had 26 fantasy points against the Jaguars and was quarterback 4 on a very productive quarterback week. I think they're both good options. I will actually give a slight bump to Kirk Cousins because of the fact that Caleb is still a little bit shaky as a quarterback, and the Jags are in London. London games get kind of wonky. The Jags could play very, very well. But they're both very good plays. If you have more confidence in Caleb, play Caleb. I just gave you a bunch of really good stats there, for him. Yep. Okay. I don't see any other questions at the moment for the London games. If you guys do have questions, you have about 10 minutes left. We're going to stay here on the live as the game's going on, as long as you guys, keep throwing in some questions. But we want to make sure those questions are answered first. I also want to note, if you're a first-time viewer this week, thank you so much for joining us. We do this live show every week, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, available on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. If you're watching live and you're enjoying the show, drop a like on this video. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. We do drop 2 shows during the week. They are not live. They are pre-recorded, but we give you guys a show on Tuesdays and Fridays. It's available on our YouTube channel and all audio streaming platforms if you'd rather subscribe and listen on an iTunes or Spotify. All right, from KJ Frederick, full PPR play. Mike Evans or Zach Moss? Yes, we got a Mike Evans question. Need the win this week against my brother for bragging rights. Man, I don't like saying bench Mike Evans. I really don't. I don't like uttering those words.
I'd bench Mike Evans.
It's a Lattimore week, but you're right. It's a Lattimore week.
So Mike Evans on my all bust team. It was funny. You guys should go watch that episode back. But as soon as I said Mike Evans on the all bust team, Nick was like, and then he realized they were playing the Saints. And he was like, oh, of course. That's why you had to bust him. So here's the numbers for Mike Evans against the Saints defense. We know Mike Evans has this historic streak of 1,000 yards over every team, over his career in every single season. He's played 19 games against the Saints. He has not totaled 1,000 yards against this team. Only 5 touchdowns in 19 games, which is about 1 touchdown for every 4 games. That's not great. He has an average of 3 catches for 50 yards per game against this team. He hasn't scored a touchdown in his last 5 games against them. He hasn't eclipsed more than 4 targets in the last 5 games against them. So if you want to bench him, this is 100% the spot to do it, and Zach Moss is a great pivot this week.
I'll agree with my co-host here, though it's a very, very tough bench.
Yeah.
All right, KJ Rhodes, you know you have to love football to be a Jet fan. I'm a lifelong Jet fan. Should I play Garrett Wilson over Mike Evans this week, full PPR?
Yes.
Yeah, why not? Garrett Wilson was great last week. He had, close to 30 fantasy points. I think he hung up at 29, I want to say. The Bills have been tough on wide receivers. I do want to note that they've allowed the 5th fewest points to wide receivers. But this is a win, or this is my opinion, win or go home game for the Jets this week. You're on prime time. You just fired your coach, coming off the London game. The Bills are banged up, division rival. You're at home. This is a win or go home game for the Jets. We're right around the trade deadline. You win. You go out of your way to trade for Devontae Adams, or you find a way to get Hassan Reddick in this building. Like you make some move to propel you to be a serious Super Bowl contender in the AFC. You'll lose. You might be sellers, and the Aaron Rodgers trade might be one of the worst trades in franchise history. That's just the reality of it. So, give him my take, but based on the stats that Nick gave you and the fact that Garrett Wilson is the wide receiver one over there and has to get fed, I will, yes, play Garrett Wilson this week over him.
Yep, 100%.
From Stanley, A.J. Brown or Shaheed or Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver or flex spot. A.J. Brown has started every single week. There's really no matchup I'd bench him for. And then if you can get Tolbert in your flex, I would get Tolbert in your flex.
Totally agree. I'm surprised we haven't gotten more Saints questions this week, especially with no Carr, Spencer Rattler getting the start.
We haven't gotten any Olave questions. I guess you guys are all high on Olave and confident in Olave. I'm an Olave owner in Dynasty, and I wanted to bench him, but Neighbors is out this week, and I think I have another player out this week, so I couldn't bench Olave this week. I wanted to, but
I would bench Olave if you have.
I can't do it. I'm
telling the audience, Nick. I'm not telling you.
Well,
I would definitely not play Shaheed this week. I think that is one of the biggest risks you can have.
For the audience, at least, I'm starting Chris Godwin and started Debo, and my flexes are Tank Dell and Olave. Wanted to play Neighbors. I have Neighbors out. I have Taylor out. My other options like Quentin Johnston don't like his matchup. Keon Coleman don't like his matchup. And then I just have a bunch of kind of rookies. Kareem Hunt is on bye. So this is a tough week for me. All right, guys, again, if you have any questions for the Sunday morning game, get them in now. We have 8 minutes left. We'll keep going live until we answer all of your questions and until we kind of do a quick injury preview. From Deshaun, start 2 flex options, Chase Brown, Tucker Kraft, Jerome Ford, or Joshua Palmer. I don't want Palmer in my lineup. I don't want Ford in my lineups. I think I'm going with Chase Brown and Kraft here.
Yeah, I agree. I'm surprised I agree on that one, but I do agree.
You know what, Joe? This is the best comment Joe has ever wrote on this show. I love this one. I'm sure Hassan Reddick will solve all of the Jets' offensive problems. I love it. Maybe he can play tight end.
Joe's a Panthers fan, by the way, so I don't know what he's talking about.
From Dirty Mike, Terry McLaurin or Zay Flowers in the flex. It is full PPR. Terry McLaurin facing the Ravens and the Ravens facing the Commanders. These are both very positive matchups. The Ravens allow did my thing just reset? Where's the Ravens here? There they are. The Ravens allow the 3rd most fantasy points to receivers at 37.2. The Commanders allow the 6th most points to receivers at 33.8. I will lean Flowers here. Was Flowers on your all boom? I think he was.
He was on my all boom.
All right, so you could take. I'm sure you're taking Flowers as well. So I'll let you talk about Flowers. I'm a Terry owner, and I was actually higher on Terry than most coming into this season. They are letting Jaden Daniels throw a bit more, and he probably will have to throw more in this game if they want to compete and win. But I haven't seen him force feed Terry, where I know that Lamar has the connection with Zay Flowers. So that's my take. I'll let Nick go now, and who does have Zay Flowers on his all boom team this week.
Yeah, so in Zay Flowers, 5 games, and by the way, through 5 games has the toughest strength of schedule for the wide receiver position among any receiver in football. He has 3 games over 10 targets in that span, and now he gets his easiest matchup of the season. Commanders, defense, horrible. Nick already talked about those stats. And the concern there, the only concern for him not to have a big game and get that under 10 targets is if the Ravens are up the entire game, which is definitely possible. It's in the range of outcomes for sure. So I don't mind if you want to play McLaurin because the game script should be better for him. But Zay Flowers has just proven it in all these tough matchups where he should just be a must start, where Terry McLaurin is still going to be matchup based. And this is a good matchup for McLaurin. Like, I wouldn't have mind putting McLaurin on the all boom team as well. But I would lean with Zay Flowers, who has been more consistent, I think is the better wide receiver, the better talented wide receiver at least.
All right. Great question coming up here, Nick. I love questions like this on the show. From Canton, Mike Evans or Darnell Mooney, full PPR. So Mooney on the season right now is sitting at
15, right? Something around there.
Yeah, I know he's high. I'm just making sure this is PPR before I scroll down the list. Yeah, he's wide receiver 15. He did have a stinker week 1, but the entire Falcons offense threw up a stinker. Since then, he has three out of 4 weeks with over 14 fantasy points. 2 of those, he has over 17 fantasy points, including last week with 31. This is a guy who was my guy on the show a couple years ago, and he did vastly outperform his ADP with those Bears. His target share since week 2 is over 6 in each game. That's 7, 8, 6, and 16. He has over 56 yards in all of his last 4 games. He has 3 touchdowns. I'm just throwing stats out there, but yeah, I would rather Mooney over Evans this week with the Lattimore matchup.
I agree. It's hard to say, but I totally agree with that one.
Stanley, I see here you wrote that you also have DJ Moore. If you're talking about your AJ Brown question, I still like AJ Brown and Tolbert more than DJ Moore. Nick might like DJ Moore more, but I like
DJ
Tolbert
Moore on the all boom. I would slot in DJ Moore
for Tolbert.
Tolbert, yeah. I'm going to give a couple quick stats here because I do have them on the all boom and I have them.
And guys, 4 questions. 4 minutes. So you really got to get your lineup set. So if you have any questions regarding Bears, Jags, throw them in like now. You're not going to have time in a minute.
So the Jags allow the most points to the wide receiver position in DJ Moore's career for fantasy. The problem has been his inconsistency. Now he has 5 straight games with Caleb Williams, over 10 points, wide receiver 6. Last week, 27 points. Jacksonville this week, then the bye, then he gets the Commanders. This dude is like going to ball out and have his best season that he's had in his career. So I really like it. And then he finishes with one of the 5 easiest schedules in fantasy football. I think DJ Moore is a trade high for right now, or try and trade next week when he's on bye and someone needs the win that has him.
All right, Nick, do you have the injury preview pulled up?
I do not. I can get it up.
Okay, I'm only asking because I believe I set my lineup last night, but I'm taking a quick peek just to make sure that my lineups are okay. And as much as I love answering your questions and talking with you guys, I do need to make sure that my lineups are completely set before 9:30. At least I don't have many Jags or
the only Jag I consistently have is Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah, I don't think I own any Bears. I do have Keenan in one place, but
I do still have the risk of him playing though. I'm taking the shot there.
Okay, we're gonna go to injury preview now, guys. If you have any other questions regarding any game or any fantasy football related questions, we will prioritize your questions over our game by game preview. But now we're gonna go game by game, just talk about each injury, and Nick's gonna give what he's kind of looking for. So the first one here is the Commanders against the Ravens. It looks like the Ravens are a little bit banged up on the offensive line, but nothing to really be concerned about. Brian Robinson is out for the Commanders, and that is not good for a guy who has really seemed a little bit touchdown dependent so far this season.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, the one thing I guess I would want to see out of this game is how real is Jaden Daniels. This is going to be his toughest matchup. He has been phenomenal. I believe he has, or at some point this year, he had more punts than intercept, or more less incomplete passes than punts or something like that. Some crazy stat. He is on a heater, and we want to see how consistent it is. And for the Ravens defense, we want to see how consistent they are. They might be a must take advantage of for offenses. So those are 2 things we definitely want to track this week.
All right, so we got a question here. Start Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Aaron Rodgers, or Herbert or Rattler. Not Herbert, so don't worry about getting him in your lineup in the next 30 seconds. Probably Daniel Jones. I don't want Herbert. I just don't want Herbert starting ever. I don't want Herbert starting, and it's not a knock on his talent, but that's just the way that the Chargers are playing football right now. And I can't take the chance on Rattler. I can't. I'll play Daniel Jones in primetime. You have a guy to root for in primetime Sunday Night Football. That's just it's always fun to have a guy on Thursday, a guy on Sunday, and a guy on Monday, and a guy in London if you can. It is always fun to have something to root for.
Yeah. No,
all right. Cardinals against the Packers. There's some good games this week. For the Cardinals, looks like everybody's healthy except for Matt Prater. So if you have Prater as your kicker, he is not playing today, I believe. It says questionable here, but I think he was ruled out.
Okay.
Then as for the Packers, Luke Musgrave is ruled out. That's only going to help Tucker Kraft. Christian Watson is questionable with the ankle. I still wouldn't play him. And Jair Alexander is questionable. So that's big for Marvin Harrison Jr. What do you think on this one?
I mean, I'll be honest. I don't think
You're
there's
muted.
much. No, I'm not. Can you hear me?
You are muted.
I am not muted.
Maybe my headphones died. I bet it was my headphones. Keep talking.
It is Nick's headphones. So I'm gonna go off of this and say, I mean, I guess for the Packers, we still want to learn about their wide receivers a little bit more. But if 5 weeks in, we're still questioning it, there's probably no one outside of Jaden Reed that you can consistently start. On the Cardinals side of the ball, I guess I would really want to see how big of a step Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to take. We've seen Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors outperform him up to this point of the season. And then we need to see who that defined wide receiver 2 is. This is a very high-powered offense in Arizona. And we know that we have James Conner, who's consistent. We know we have a tight end who's solid in McBride. We know we have Marvin Harrison Jr., who's been up and down. But usually when there's an elite offense at the level of the Lions, the Packers, the Rams, the Eagles, there's 2 receivers that are usually getting started or at least flexible. So I want to see who that number 2 is going to be. I think it's Michael Wilson, but we'll see if he's consistent enough to start. You there, Nick? Nope, you cannot hear me. All right. We'll get into this question. Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, or Romeo Doubs. We had the same question earlier, and we said Khalil Shakir, you play if he's healthy. If not, you can pivot to Keon Coleman. Do not worry about Romeo Doubs.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Just in case you didn't hear our answer, yes. Just go with whoever the Bills receiver is. Okay. Back to the injury game-by-game preview here. The Houston Texans at the New England Patriots. Looks like Joe Mixon is going to return after being out with the ankle for a couple weeks. He had 170 yards on the ground week 1, looked dominant. The Patriots, Ramondre Stevenson is out. I did not like that matchup for him, so I don't like Antonio Gibson. Didn't get any Gibson questions this week. There's actually a lot of injuries for the Patriots. They're pretty banged up, and nobody else that's notable. You're what you're looking for on this one. I think Drake May's starting though. So I think there is something you're looking for, and I want you to reiterate your take that you had on Friday.
Yes. Friday. So Nick and I, every All Boom Bust episode, at the end of the show, we give you one deep sleeper, one guy we want you to pick up on waivers this week before we think they're going to be the number 1 or 2 next week on your waiver wire. My guy is Demario Douglas. He's the wide receiver 1 for the New England Patriots. He's a young receiver. And for 2 of the last 3 weeks, he has had 9 targets, which is great production and great usage, especially for the Patriots, a team that's game script should be rough and not going to be great for the duration of the season. So I really like that. And I mentioned it on the show. I am not a big college football fan. I do not watch college as much as I probably should, or even pay attention to it as much as I should. Having said that, every single comp about Drake May I have seen is Nick's favorite stat sheet stuffer, Justin Herbert. Not as much of a stat sheet stuffer this year, but that's been the comp. The size, the arm, the build, the athleticism, the risk-taking, whatever you want to call it. That's been the comp. And if he is 80% of stat sheet stuffer Justin Herbert, the wide receiver 1 and 2 on that team need to be rostered. That offense will be much better. Whether it's good for actual football or not is a different situation. But if he is this bigger armed, more athletic stat sheet stuffer, we are going to grab Jalen Polk and Demario Douglas after this week. I would lean more on Douglas, just seeing that he's had more of a guaranteed workload with Jacoby Brissett.
I also want to note here that if I had given a guy on Friday, it would be Kamani Vidal, who was drafted in the 6th round by the Chargers. It was the running back that Harbaugh chose to draft when they were looking at a running back throughout the draft. They wanted Blake Corum. Harbaugh came out this week and made a couple really nice comments about Vidal, basically saying he's going to get involved. He's ready to go. I forget the Harbaugh like quote that he had. It was one of those ridiculous ones, but this might not be the week for Vidal, but I think it's going to come, and he's a good stash. So just wanted to note that. All right, next game, Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the New Orleans Saints. It's fight week. Rachaad White is doubtful with the foot injuries. This is a really good opportunity for Bucky Irving to really take full control of that backfield. No other notable injuries really for the Bucs. And then for this Saints, Derek Carr is out, so Spencer Rattler will be making his first NFL start. Taysom Hill is also out, so no Taysom Hill nonsense. Kendre Miller was also activated off of the IR. Looks like he's going to be healthy, but Kamara's looked so good this year. I don't think there's any threat to Kendre Miller. I'm cutting into his touches. But what are you looking for this week besides the Mike Evans fight week?
You talked about it. I actually really like Kendre Miller, and I think he's going to get a lot more involved than we think. I don't know if it's going to be this week or next week. He is someone that I wish I would have taken in leagues last week, 2 weeks ago, and put on my IR spot and not moved my starting lineup, because he is a great player to roster. Kamara is an older running back. He's been very fortunate to have been lucky so far throughout his career. He has not missed significant time at any point in his career. And Kendre Miller at the end of last year was getting a lot more usage than we talked about. I'm going to pull up some of the stats here, but his numbers were trending in an upward trajectory before he got injured at the end. Or I don't know if it was the last week of the season or sometime in the off season, but in the last week of the season, 13 carries, 73 yards, and a touchdown. That was very good usage in his last game of the season in a very high scoring matchup. So I think he is going to present some upside. We've seen the Saints consistently look for another running back to take the workload off of Kamara on the ground, whether it be the first and second down rushing. So this way Kamara could be the third down back, receiving back, play more of that role. We've seen them do it before. It was obviously different coaching staff where they did it with Mark Ingram. They brought in Jamal Williams to try and replace him and that kind of workload. So eventually it's going to happen. And Kendre Miller is one of the, he had been fortunate enough to be healthy in his career, but I do think he is more talented than some of those other backups there. So I want to see how much workload and how much timeshare Kendre actually gets, because I know I mentioned Demario Douglas. There's a very high upside that Kendre Miller is one of the top waiver wire picks after this week.
Okay, so maybe that's another one that we may want to stash. Good call by Nick right there. And I wish you guys had listened to that Bucky Irving take a couple of weeks ago. I wish I had. I mean, I listened to myself, but he just wasn't available anywhere. All right, the Cleveland Browns. Nick Chubb is still out. I think he got activated off the IR, but he is still out. And for the Eagles,
he's tracking to play next week.
Trying to play next week. Okay, for the Eagles, no player injury designations. They are fully healthy. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, they're all back. I think this is going to be coming off the bye at home. This might be a slaughter, Nick. I know the Browns' defense has looked good over the past couple of years, but I don't know. Everything is just screaming bad about the Browns to me. I think this could be a slaughtering.
Here would be my only concern for it not being a slaughtering is if they make the decision to bench Deshaun Watson for Jameis.
And J-Bo comes in.
And the Eagles defense is not great. They've not been great this far. So it could definitely be a Jameis Winston returns game. And I mean, I know me and Nick and most of the chat, we'd be freaking hyped for this to happen. We all want it to happen. The return of Jameis Winston, get that guy out of there. So let's hopefully that we get to see it. But I agree with Nick. You know who to start.
Watson against the Eagles defense is the resistible force against the movable object. Watson is bad. The Eagles' defense is bad.
100%.
From John Caldwell, thanks for joining, John. Tyrone Tracy or Jeremy McNichols, is this PPR? I think even if it's not PPR, I'm still leaning on Tracy, but we do like to know if it's PPR or not.
I agree with Nick. I'd go Tyrone Tracy no matter the format.
I think I would as well, but figured I'd ask.
Yeah.
All right, the Indianapolis Colts against the Tennessee Titans. Unfortunately, Anthony Richardson is coming back from the oblique injury that is bad for Michael Pittman, who has a back injury and is questionable. He should play. Josh Downs, a toe injury, should play. But again, bad for the receivers there. Jonathan Taylor is still out with an ankle. Hopefully he returns next week. For the Titans, I think they're coming off the bye as well. I don't remember them playing last week, but maybe they did. But no injury designations that are really notable for the Titans.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta talk about this stat because it was one of the craziest things in the history of sports betting lines. Nick, I mentioned it in our chat, but I don't know if you got a chance to read it. Here's the number. So the Titans were a 1.5 to 1 point favorite in this game when they thought Flacco was going to be the starter. The line then moved because so many people hammered the Colts to the point where the Titans were then a 2.5-point underdog in this matchup against Flacco. When they announced that Anthony Richardson was the starter, for the first time in NFL history, when the starting quarterback returned to a lineup, the line moved 4 points back in the other direction to a 2-point favorite for the Tennessee Titans, depending on the platform. So what are the sports books telling you? That they absolutely hate Anthony Richardson. It's actually a 2.5-point line now for the Titans. So Anthony Richardson is literally considered a way worse quarterback. This would be the difference of Patrick Mahomes and Carson Wentz playing in a game, except if Carson Wentz was the starter and Mahomes was the backup. So they really like the backup a lot more. It is insane for this. And just based on that, I mean, we want to see if Anthony Richardson's got anything in there. I saw him on a ton of my waiver wires. He has not been good for fantasy outside of week 1, but he got so hyped up. There were the stats trending around in the offseason where he had 17 football games as a starter since high school. That's horrible, and clearly he's gotten a few more in the NFL so far. I don't think he's going to be that great. I think we're going to see a little bit more of the Trey Lance stuff where you did not get enough workload. You thought you'd mold him, and then he got an injury early on and just could never get that opportunity back. I think it would have made a lot of sense to let him sit the year behind Joe Flacco once you got him, but I obviously understand that they didn't want to do that.
He had one good game week 1, and that was really it. I don't know if we could call him the biggest bust
with 9 completions. With 9 completions.
I don't know if we could call him the biggest bust of the year for quarterbacks, only because Josh Allen was your quarterback 1 drafted and is right now quarterback 6. Then there's Patrick Mahomes at quarterback 15. But here's the thing. I told you guys in the offseason, don't draft any of these guys, especially Richardson. I was all over not touching Anthony Richardson with a 9-foot pole. So I'll pat myself on the back for that one. Very nice comment from Nick's fiance and his very, very happy son who just celebrated his first birthday last week. Enjoys the content. He's a football kid, which is good.
Yeah, big football guy.
From Game and 8, James Cook is still questionable and plays on Monday. Do I risk it and keep him in my lineup, or should I swap him out before it's too late? Well, who are your options? So I'm a James Cook owner. It's a 10-man league, a 5-man bench. It is a very, very tricky league to navigate, knowing how small my roster is. I just picked up Braylon Allen just in case. I didn't have a better option at running back even playing this week, so my option was either keep Cook in there or drop somebody and pick up a backup that plays Monday. So let us know who's on your bench that you can play, or maybe who's on your waiver wire, and we could try to help you out with that situation. From Ghost Man, should I bench James Cook since he's hurt and start either Alexander Madison, who'll be starting in place of Zamir White against the who the Raiders facing? Why am I getting these teams mixed up today? The
Raiders are facing the Steelers.
Okay, so I would not start Madison or Trey Sermon. Sermon has a good matchup. I think I kind of want to just play Sermon knowing that he has the good matchup.
Yeah, Sermon's produced enough for fantasy, and James Cook, I love James Cook. The Jets are also a very tough matchup. James Cook, if he were healthy, would have winded up on my all-bust team for the week. So I have no problem pivoting off of James Cook for a better Trey Sermon and a better matchup.
Let me ask this one, Ghost Man. How did your Thursday go? Did you face Debo and Kenneth Walker and you're projected to lose by 40? Like, what's your matchup looking like? Because if you're projected to win, I would just take the points from Trey Sermon. But if you need like a high upside, then you might have to just take the Cook possible opportunity. But let us know about that as well. From Fernando Lewis, thanks for joining the show, my friend. I know we've seen you before. Morning, guys. Need some help for the flex. Olave or Tolbert full PPR? Yes, we got an Olave question. It only took an hour and 15 minutes. I'll let you take it first, Nick, but I think I know where we're both kind of leaning with this one.
I would bench Chris Olave in this matchup. I like Jalen Tolbert for sure. Me and Nick both like Tolbert. We like that opportunity with no Brandon Cooks there in a very high projected over-under game. Jalen Tolbert should be locked into lineups. Chris Olave with Spencer Rattler. Go let Olave sit on the bench. Go watch Rattler have a good game and be happy that you can play Olave. But I think it's more likely that you don't see a dominant Olave game. You might see the target share that you want, but I don't know if I think he was a 5th-round drafted quarterback. You're not going to trust that in his first ever NFL start.
So here's some good news. Here's some good news for Olave owners, including myself in the Dynasty League. His snap share is great. He's over 70% snaps for the entire season. He had 94 last week. His targets are pretty solid. Week 2 to 4, he had 6+ targets, including 10 in week 4. Last week, he had a really tough matchup against the Chiefs. We were both out on Olave last week. But now here's the tough thing about Olave. He has yet to net 100 yards in a game this season. He only has 1 touchdown. I don't know where he's sitting, but he's a wide receiver 50 or something like that. He did score 20 points once this season, but 3 games under 12. It's really tough. And I wanted to bench Olave in this league, but I'm dealing with a Jonathan Taylor injury. I'm dealing with a Malik Neighbors injury, and Kareem Hunt is out. So I actually have to play Olave, and I'm not thrilled about it. Me and Nick are all over Jalen Tolbert. Facing the Lions, allow the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers, allow the most points to wide receivers last year. The Cowboys love to throw the ball. They just can't seem to get the running game going. Tolbert had 20 fantasy points last week on 11 targets. I think Tolbert's a slam dunk play. I did not put him on my old boom team. Yes, I did. I did put him on my old boom team. So he has double-digit fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 matchups, 5+ targets in 3+ games this season. The Lions' average points allowed is 32.4 to wide receivers. Let's get Tolbert in there. So going back to Ghostman's question, he's projected to win by 59%. He had the San Francisco defense going. I would take your points with Sermon, only because I don't want to tell you to pick up Braylon Allen and then you're playing a backup running back when you could have played Sermon. I would just take your points at this point.
Totally agree.
From John Caldwell, Kyler Murray or Justin Fields, 6-point rushing and 4-point passing. I don't think the Packers defense has been good this season.
They haven't. They've been missing their top corners for a lot of games.
And I'm not sure if they're just going to play, but I still love the upside of Kyler Murray over Justin Fields because the Steelers just don't score points.
Totally agree.
The Steelers win very ugly really ugly football games, and that is not good for fantasy football.
Mm-hmm.
Half PPR from Dale. Tyrone Tracy, Rico Dowdle, Michael Pittman are likely. I'm assuming we have to only pick one. I don't want to play likely, only because I don't know where the targets are all going on the offense. I don't really love the Pittman matchup only because of Anthony Richardson, and I've been Tracy over Dowdle the entire time, so let's go with Tracy. I think he's going to at least get in the end zone. If you ask me to place a touch, if Nick gave me $100 and said, put it on one of these 4 guys who's going to score a touchdown, I would put it on Tracy. I wouldn't bet my money, but if Nick handed me that money and said you could only use it for this reason, that's what I would do.
I think I agree with that. I think Tracy's the most likely to get in the end zone. Last week, he was also incredibly efficient, more efficient than Singletary. The Bengals defense is horrible. Pittman has a tough matchup. He's going up against the number 1 team against the wide receiver position. Rico Dowdle going up against the top 5 position. Against the running back position, Isaiah Likely. I don't know where the Commanders rank against the tight end. I know the secondary is not great, but I'm not playing a tight end over a running back who will have a guaranteed.
The Commanders are tougher against tight ends. Fifth least points allowed at 5.1. I know it's the only thing on defense they're actually kind of good against. And I don't know if they're good or if that's just kind of how
they haven't played a top tight end yet. Yeah, it's tough to tell.
All right.
But the other 3 all have matchups against top 5 against in that position. Tyrone Tracy. I believe the Bengals are top half at least and has guaranteed workload. So I'm more than happy to take the shot on Tracy.
Okay, next question from Gaiman 8. I'm going to go back to his question here. He's worried about playing James Cook. Should he play him or not? His other option here is Zach Moss on his bench. I like Zach Moss. I think it could be a higher scoring game tonight. The Giants defense their front 7 is a bit tough, but I think Zach Moss has touchdown upside. So I'm okay with playing Zach Moss and not James Cook. But here's my other thing for you for your Gaiman 8. Is there somebody on your bench that you just a bum, like I hate to be honest, but like a bum, like a guy that you don't need? Can you drop somebody on your bench for Braylon Allen or maybe a Bills back? And here's why. Moss is playing on Sunday Night Football. If it looks like you're going to win, if you're projected to win, or if you're up a lot of points, just play Zach Moss and get your points. If you're projected to lose and you need a home run, then maybe put James Cook in there, but have a backup just in case so you do still get points. So make sure you have Braylon Allen or one of the Bills backs on your bench because James Cook will end up being your home run play. So this is a decision that you will then make at 7 o'clock tonight rather than now. That's my take, at least.
I like that idea.
But yes, I think Zach Moss is a fine play this week.
Just a quick note, because I got the notification. I do not have the game on for us, but the first drive of the game, Tank Bigsby had 4 snaps, 3 carries on that first drive. So he's getting a lot more workload than a lot of projected.
Me and Nick will watch this once we sign off. From John Caldwell, Fields or Golf, 6 point everything. I will go with Golf here because I think there's more of an opportunity. These were his numbers against the Cowboys last year. Not great numbers. 19 for 34 for 271 yards. The yardage is good. 1 touchdown to 2 INTs. So that is a little bit concerning, but I just don't like playing Fields. I know he had like 30 points last week, but he just doesn't. They don't score a lot of points. They're only averaging, I think, 13 or 16 points a week as a team. So that's just concerning to me as a whole. And the Lions are projected to score the most points this season.
Yeah, no, I agree with Nick there. The over-under in the Detroit-Dallas game, 52.5, highest on the week, insanely high over-under. Vegas-Pittsburgh, 36.5, the second lowest on the week. Very, very low over-under. We like to go with the quarterbacks in the higher scoring games. I would also say a concern of mine for Justin Fields, Russell Wilson is activated, and I'm not saying that Russ is going to cook and get in the game, but Russ did play against the Raiders when he was in that division. He knows that personnel a little bit better, and he should probably, if Justin Fields is struggling early on, they should probably pivot to him. I'm not a Russell Wilson guy. Any post Seattle, I loved him in Seattle. Do not love him since. But there is a real opportunity that we see Russell Wilson in this game if it is not trending in the right direction early.
I do need to note this. Justin Fields is our quarterback 9 on the season. His last 3 weeks, 19.4, 32, and 15.9. He's ahead of guys like CJ Stroud, who was drafted top 5, Patrick Mahomes, who was drafted top 3, obviously Anthony Richardson. So play Golf, but if Fields is on the field, like he's proving to be a starter in your lineup.
Sure.
From Christopher Bernard, pick 2 full PPR, Zach Moss, Austin Eckler, or Bucky Irving. I really like Eckler this week. I like the fact that Brian Robinson is out. I like the fact that his snap share went up when he returned from his injury. I like the fact that the Ravens defense is kind of a Swiss cheese situation. He should catch a lot of balls. I think the game script will call for the Commanders being down some points. So I think Eckler's my number 1. Then it's kind of tough between the other two because Zach Moss going up against the Giants. They do have a really solid front 7. I forget what Kenneth Walker's numbers were against them, but they do have a solid front 7. And then we have Bucky Irving going up against the New Orleans Saints. Now, neither of those two teams allow top 10 points to 2 running backs, but they're also not bottom 10 either. The Giants are about the Giants allow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So the Giants allow the 12th fewest points to running backs, and the Saints are right there at 13. The difference is 18.2 to 18.6, so it's a 0.4 difference. So the matchups are kind of even. I think the Bucs will have to lean on a little bit more of Bucky Irving, especially if Mike Evans is getting shut down, and Baker's kind of struggled against the Saints. So I'm going to lean on Bucky Irving as long as Rachaad White is out. He's doubtful. You'll get the injury report at 11. I think as long as he's out, I'll lean on Bucky Irving, whereas tonight Zach Moss will have to compete with Chase Brown, who has been very, very productive.
I agree. I like Eckler as the lock, and then I would go Bucky Irving as well. Rachaad White and the Buccaneers against the Saints, his last 3 games, he has 35 rushing attempts for about 150 yards. Not a ton of work on the ground, but in the air, he has 13 receptions for 87 yards. That is a ton of work, and he has a touchdown in those matchups. If there is no Rachaad White, there is no backup to Bucky Irving on that team that is going to take a lot of that workload. I would expect Bucky Irving to get 80%-ish snap share and get a ton of that guaranteed workload in this game.
And for you guys still rocking with us, if you're watching live, make sure you drop a like on this video, whether you're in Facebook or YouTube or even Instagram. If you're watching YouTube and you're not subscribed to the channel, please take 30 seconds to subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell icon so you get notifications every time we go live or drop a new video. We're live every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram to answer all of your fantasy football questions. Then we give you guys 2 shows during the week. They are pre-recorded and drop on Tuesdays and Fridays. They're available on YouTube for the audio and video form, and then they're available in audio podcast form on iTunes, Spotify, anywhere where you do get your podcast. We're also on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Primetime Fantasy Podcast, or PrimeTimeFFPod. So we're everywhere and happy to help you guys out with fantasy football.
Yeah.
All right, from John again, double flex. Josh Downs or Braylon Allen. If I play Allen, I will have 4 running backs playing: Najee Harris, Kenneth Walker, and Jordan Mason. I'll play Josh Downs because I see more of a touchdown upside than Braylon Allen. Breece Hall is just one of the best backs in the league, and I know they like Allen a bit, but I don't see him getting a major role in this game.
I would go for Braylon Allen. The Titans are the number 1 team against the wide receiver position. The Buffalo Bills are the 32nd best team against the running back position, meaning that they are the easiest matchup for running backs. And that would be purely a matchup-based stat. Braylon Allen is also the bigger running back. They did switch the play calling over, and the entire coaching staff was not berating Nathaniel Hackett, but was definitely upset at the fact that Braylon Allen wasn't getting the goal line work. Braylon Allen is much bigger, much stronger. So if they are near the goal line, I would expect that Braylon Allen gets those touches and kind of vultures those from Breece Hall, who we expected to be, Nick had him as the RB1 on the season. I had him as a top 3 running back for sure. So it's going to trend that way with the play calling switch if Braylon Allen gets that goal line work.
What on earth is Hackett's role with the Jets at the moment?
He has pretty much been ghost fired, meaning he is on the team, but he has literally no role.
Aaron Rodgers has to have a clause in his contract where he just it just appears on the sidelines. He's basically Rodgers' cheerleader at this point.
I saw a report that he is pretty much doing intern type work now for the team, where it's literally printing the call sheets and giving them out to the players and that kind of stuff. That a job where Nick and I could get in 3 years if we really committed ourselves to football. That's the kind of
that's so funny.
He's getting. Yeah.
All right. We're going to keep going to our game-by-game preview. Got 5 more games left. So if you do have any questions, we'll prioritize those questions as we've been doing. But yeah, so we'll talk about these games and get out of here. So for the Chargers, Gus Edwards with the ankle injury is out. Nick, the Chargers have a bunch of injuries for a team that I think is just coming off the bye, right? Or did they play last week? I think they're coming off the bye. I see 4 corners here that are either out or questionable. I'm not sure who the starters are, for being completely honest with you. But, I think it's Fulton and Asante Samuel, maybe. They're both questionable. Asante Samuel's actually listed here twice. So 3 corners that are banged up. Joey Bosa's banged up. He's questionable, but he should play. And then for the Broncos, they look pretty much healthy. But this is the game at 4 o'clock that damn it, man. This 4 o'clock. I was about to say this is the game for the 4 o'clock, so we will not see on the red zone too much. And then I scroll down on this list and I see the Steelers and the Raiders.
And then the Falcons and the Panthers. Yeah. No, horrible 4 o'clock.
We're going to see a lot of Cowboys and Lions on the red zone and probably a good chunk of the Falcons plays as well. That's my guess.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, what are you looking for in this Chargers-Broncos game? This has to be the least friendly fantasy football game of the week, I think.
For sure. These are 2 teams that run some of the least amount of plays per game, which is horrible for fantasy. Both these teams try and dominate time of possession on offense. And, it works to win football games. It does not work for our fantasy lineups. Nick mentioned his name earlier today. The question is Kamani Vidal. And is he going to overtake J.K. Dobbins at some point this season? Maybe. We'll find out. He's a rookie running back. J.K. Dobbins has looked good. The first 2 weeks did not look
good. And I don't think he'll do it today, but I just want to see what his snap share is and how he looks on the field. I'm looking for an eye test.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing you wanted to see from Bucky Irving, right? So is he getting the time on the field, and does he look better than the other running backs with that time on the field? Is he more efficient in yards per carry? Is he getting any goal line work? What does that look like? And that's a good indicator for the course of the season. So Nick, I think, hit the nail on the head earlier. I think he's a great stash. And he's a good player that you could easily dump on Tuesday if does not play well for your waiver wire.
All right, Steelers at the Raiders. No real injuries for the Steelers. For the Raiders, Devontae Adams is still out with his hamstring. It looks like Jacoby Myers is going to be out as well, so a lot of opportunity for Trey Tucker there. But maybe the Steelers will double Trey Tucker. I don't know. Zamir White with a groin injury also looks like he will be out. So opportunity for Madison against a very tough defense. I would like to see how Fields and Najee play. I mean, Najee Harris is on my all-boom team. Again, the Raiders allow the 7th most fantasy points to running backs, an average of 23.6, and the Raiders have allowed over 5 yards per rush per game. So, I mean, I don't really have anything to look for in the Raiders. I mean, the quarterback situation's the mess. That team's a mess. Like, I kind of want to see how the Steelers' offense looks, I guess, against a bad defense. And George Pickens, too, another one. Like, Pickens is so talented and just, he's in that.
He's another classic Steelers diva receiver where he, for some reason, can't control his attitude on and off the field. And just clearly you could tell that Mike Tomlin's doing everything he can to ease the situation. Then you watch Antonio Brown, you watch Juju leave, you watched, Le'Veon Bell's a running back, but a big pass catcher for the team. Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, like all these guys were chirping so much. We also saw like James Washington. The other thing I do want to see, Roman Wilson's being activated, rookie receiver for the Steelers, got a ton of hype in camp and then got hurt pretty early on. I want to see what his timeshare is on that field. I don't know if he'll be a stash for next week because Nick and I always say you want to wait till week 3, week 4 with rookies. Well, if you haven't played in 2 months for football, we're going to give you a little bit more leniency. We're going to want to see by like week 8 what you look like. So let's see week 1 if he's getting on that field in that timeshare.
Joe says that Pickens was a diva at UGA. Joe, are you watching Georgia this year? Because here's the thing. Joe, I don't know how he became a Georgia fan. This is my brother, Joe. He became a Georgia fan maybe 10-ish years ago, maybe. Like they were still an SEC team, but they weren't Georgia. They were just Georgia.
Yeah.
And then they got good. I remember texting Joe and I'm like, about the Georgia game. And he's like, yeah, I'm not watching it. They're too good. Mm-hmm. And I found it hilarious because all of Joe's teams kind of stink. And he finally got a team that was good and they were dominant. And he's like, yeah, I don't watch a bunch of Georgia. Their games don't matter.
Right. Listen, he's got one good team. He's got his Mets who are going to eventually lose to the Dodgers or the Yankees.
Well, yes. At this point, yes. The Joe's teams actually are playing well. The Mets are in the ALCS and the Rangers were in a conference championship. He just wrote here, I haven't followed Georgia since their 2nd national championship. Joe is the only guy I know that has dropped a team after winning. That's hilarious.
That's a great comment. Pull up his next one.
Okay, this is ridiculous. Too many arrests and I don't like the Braves. You're ridiculous. You had a golden opportunity here where you were a legitimate fan of this football team. You were not a bandwagoner. You were a fan of the football team when they were mediocre to decent, bad, whatever word you want to use. They got good, the best team in the country, and you're like, nah, I don't like success. I'm going to focus my energy on the 3-win Jets and the 30-win Mets because I like suffering. Damn it.
Great point.
I wish USC was that good of a football team. I wish I could turn on USC and just be like, I hope they cover the 30-point spread.
Yeah.
Anyway, from MDAV, fellas, need one running back, 1 wide receiver, 1 flex PPR. Running backs, Monty, James Cook, and Trey Sermon. Wide receiver, I'm assuming it's Garrett Wilson, Wan'Dale Robinson, Dontavian Wicks, and Darnell Mooney. I'm out on Wicks. I think you're out on Wicks as well, so we do have some options to play with here. I'll let you go first, Nick. I know you have Monty on your all-boom team. We've talked a lot about James Cook. We've talked a lot about Sermon. Why don't we start with the running backs first, and then we'll go to a receiver, and then we'll go to a flex. So let's nail the running back.
So running back is definitely David Montgomery. Nick mentioned I have him on the all-boom team. Just a couple quick stats for you on Monty. Every single game this season, he has had over 15 fantasy points. Last year against the Dallas Cowboys, he had 14 for 65 and a touchdown. The Dallas Cowboys last season were a top 5 team against the running backs. This year, they are a bottom 5 team against the running back. So a lot more fantasy points opportunity there. They also did just pay David Montgomery, 2-year, $18 million contract. That is a more per year than Derrick Henry got. No one loves David Montgomery like Coach Man Campbell, right? Like no one wants to run through a wall more than David Montgomery. He was the Jamal Williams replacement, and he has lived up to it. In 19 games that he has played for this team, he has 17 total touchdowns. 19 games with Dan Campbell, 17 total touchdowns in those games. There are only 4 games in that entire span where he did not score a touchdown. If you are a sports gambler, he is pretty much an anytime touchdown every single week bet because he just is so consistent at this point. There's no reason to fade him after they give him the big money either.
Yeah, I'm with Nick. Monty's the play for the running back for all the reasons that he stated. I would love to know the Lions rushing stats since Dan Campbell took over, because they had DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, and both are pretty effective backs. Then
Yeah.
they just dump up and upgrade them for Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. So
Yeah.
All right, receivers here. We have Garrett Wilson, Wanda Robinson, Dontavian Wicks, and Darnell Mooney. I really want to. I don't think you could bench Garrett Wilson. You drafted him high. He had 30 points last week. I really don't think you could bench him, even though I like the other matchups a lot. I don't know what you think, Nick, here, but I think I'm kind of on the train that it is full PPR. I think I'm on the train to play Garrett Wilson and then flex Wandale Robinson.
I'm good with Wandale or Mooney in this spot. I think either or is a fine play. Wandale, wide receiver 19 on the year. Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 15 on the year. So either one of those is fine. I would want Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson last week, 20 targets. That's a very good sign. Change of play caller, and the play caller will definitely lean more on wide receiver 1. Another good thing to note for Breece Hall and for Braylon Allen, because we did not mention it, the new offensive play caller for the Jets was the offensive coordinator before Arthur Smith in Tennessee. And when he was
what was he with the Jets before last week?
He wasn't the OC, obviously, but he was like the number 2. I forget his exact role. But he was clearly
the advisor or something like that.
Yeah, something like one of the positions that they wanted to have, kind of because of the issues that obviously surround Nathaniel Hackett. But when he was the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans, they were top 5 in running and top 10 in passing with Ryan Tannehill. So those are some good numbers to keep in mind. And for obviously that was Derrick Henry and AJ Brown. But what did we say the Jets were built like before the year? We said it was consistent passing from the quarterback, and then it's a wide receiver 1 RB1 situation. So this should be, and it's the Jets, so you never know, but it should be more in line with that, where Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall should deliver closer to ADP rest of the season, where instead of Nathaniel Hackett, who was just absolutely horrible for this offense.
All right. From Joshua Montgomery, 1 point / full point PPR, Dontavian Wicks, Xavier Legette, or Michael Wilson. Looked at a lot of rankings. They are all very close. They probably are very close, and they're all probably very low. I want to look at Michael Wilson's stats. I think the Packers are still kind of banged up in the secondary, and I think this could end up being one of the higher scoring games of the day. With Kyler Murray over the last 3 weeks, Michael Wilson has 6+ targets in all 3 of these games. His yardage could be better, 64, 38, 78 last week. No touchdown. So I feel like he's kind of due for a touchdown, but that does concern me a little bit. But I just don't feel comfortable playing Wicks, especially after last week's. I think I'd rather play Michael Wilson, but it's a crapshoot. You're hoping for a couple targets and hopefully a touchdown with whatever guy you do play. I think Legette is the hardest matchup. We're about to talk about that Falcons and Panthers game, but the Falcons are pretty. The Falcons, I believe, are pretty much healthy. They are. The only injury they have here is Troy Anderson with a knee injury is out, but their secondary is upgraded with AJ Terrell and Justin Simmons. I'm sure Deontay Johnson will be the one that's shadowed, but that still doesn't really lead me to believe that Andy Dalton's going to throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns against the Falcons, who have been a pretty stingy and good defense this season.
Yeah, I agree. I don't love Legette this week. I do like him over the course of the season. I do think he's a very solid stash. We saw some of the upside of him. His build is very similar to DK as well. So he is physically going to present a tougher matchup for some corners. I do like Michael Wilson this week. His workload has been a little bit better. I mean, Dontavian Wicks' workload, I talked about it earlier. There's a lot of deeper issues there with his route running, his timing with Jordan Love. And it's been more of a Wicks issue. So I would be concerned that he doesn't see as much of the time on the field. If he will be the wide receiver 4 if we get Dobbs and Christian Watson back in, for sure. So
Tucker Kraft is really sort of a receiver. So is he?
Yeah, he's been a great pass catcher for them. So I think Michael Wilson would be the one I want to play.
All right. 4 more games left on our game-by-game preview. The next one actually is the Falcons and the Panthers. So like I said, no real injuries for the Falcons. I'm seeing a lot for the Panthers. I'm not sure how many they matter, but I don't know the starting offensive line. Sorry, guys, but it looks like a tackle is out. It looks like 2 centers are out. So are they on their third string center? I don't know. Deontay Johnson is questionable with an ankle. I think he's going to play, but I'm not sure. Clowney, I forgot, is still in the league. He's doubtful, probably not going to play. No, we haven't had one Chuba Hubbard question yet, but I am out on Chuba Hubbard this week. The Falcons allow the fifth fewest points to running backs, an average of 15.9. They played very well against guys like Saquon Barkley and Kamara, who did still have good fantasy games, but those are studs. I think this game script could call for the Falcons being up a really good chunk of points, even though it's a divisional matchup. Like, the team is just so much better. It should not be a close game. I know the games are close last year when Desmond Ridder was the quarterback, but come on, like.
No, I totally agree with you on that front. I mean, I guess the one thing I do want to see, you mentioned his name earlier, Xavier Legette. I want to see how much he impacts his team, frankly. He's a rookie receiver. His build is literally DK's. You can go take a look at his all that physique stuff if you really want to take a look. But he's a big body receiver, and he should be a very solid player. I think he would have been a lot higher on fantasy draft boards if he didn't get hurt before the season. He suffered an injury to start the year or before the season started. And B, I believe he was either the last pick of the first round or the first pick of the second round, somewhere around there. But having that mystique of being that late in the draft as a wide receiver, it did not help his draft stock. And this wide receiver class has proven to be loaded. I mean, we've seen Marvin Harrison look great. Malik Neighbors has looked great. Xavier Worthy's been good in spots. Brian Thomas Jr. has been fantastic. So there have been literally 4 receivers drafted ahead of him that have all looked really good this year. And if the draft class wasn't so loaded, Legette's probably closer to the 15th, 16th pick, and then he's a top 8-9 round pick for your fantasy team. So I do like Legette over the course of the season. I do think he's worth the stash, but we do need to see it a little bit more in this spot.
Okay. All right. 3 more games. And again, if you guys still have questions, we'll happily answer them. Detroit Lions at the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys still a little bit banged up in the front 7. Micah Parsons, star linebacker, is out. But aside from that, should be a fun, high-scoring game, I think. I mean, my biggest question, I'm sure it's yours too, is what's going to go on with the Cowboys running back room after Ezekiel Elliott barged into Jerry Jones' office and said, "You need to feed me. Where is my goal line work, Jerry?" That's my biggest question, is what's going to happen with the running back room for the Dallas Cowboys, because I mean, my eye test says that Dowdle's looked good. Maybe not starter good, but good enough to where he should be your starter for this year at least. That's my eye test at least, but I don't know what's going to happen now with the Ezekiel Elliott situation. Jerry does have a soft spot for certain players, so I don't know. But that's my biggest question for the Lions. When is a Laporta potty gonna show up? Because right now it's out of order.
Yeah, you nailed it. Perfect.
John Codwell on Dontavian Wicks or Josh Downs PPR. Yucky. Very yucky.
I'd go Wicks. I like the guaranteed workload over there. For sure, he gets such a target share. I think he has like about 20 targets over the last 2 weeks.
I think I'll go with Wicks as well, just because I don't want to deal with the Anthony Richardson nonsense.
And then the Titans are also the best team against the wide receiver
position.
Football. That does not help.
Joe said that Cole Kmet scored. That's good for me since I started Caleb Williams, and I guess I technically don't own any of the receivers or Swift, so that actually does benefit me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, yeah. Alrighty, Sunday Night Football, a game that really shouldn't be the Sunday night game, but it's going to end up being a close game that comes down to the last minute. The Bengals, Chase Brown is questionable with a quad injury. I haven't seen any indication that he's not going to play. Then the Giants, unfortunately, Malik Neighbors is missing a second straight game with a concussion. Devin Singletary's missing a second straight game with a groin. We've already talked about Tyrone Tracy. I don't want to steal your thunder, but again, I think there's a good opportunity for Tracy. If he plays well again today, I don't think Singletary's really stepping on the field too much, besides maybe some goal line work. And I don't think Tracy's available in many leagues at this point, but if he is, he should be rostered in 100% of leagues.
Totally agree. Nick kind of nailed the questions. It's all on the Giants side of the ball. We know Cincinnati's offense is going to be explosive no matter what. They've been great through the outside of week 1. They've been. I
would still like to look at the running back stuff though for Cincy. That's going to be one of my question marks for them every single week, is which running back seems to be maybe sort of separating themselves as the one.
Yeah, I guess so. I do think that they are trending a little bit more towards. I don't want to say that they're as good as the Lions at all, but I do think they're trending towards having two capable starters every single week. I don't know if they'll have the Gibbs Monty upside because they are very pass heavy as well. But I do think that they are trending more towards that way. I mean, we have to remember Joe Mixon was the RB6 last year. Like they need to replace that, and these two guys are doing a pretty good job at that through 5 weeks.
And last game of the week, the Buffalo Bills coming into Nick's Football Jets MetLife Stadium on Monday Night Football. Bills are banged up. James Cook with a toe injury is questionable. I don't think it's turf toe, but if it is, that's a problem. Khalil Shakir with an ankle is questionable. I don't think Shakir is going to play. Cook really does seem like a true questionable. I mean, it's Tyler Conklin with a hip as well is questionable, but it's a big week for Nick's Jets, and I'm not just saying that because you're a Jet fan. I mean, they fired their head coach. They lost to the Vikings. I think they've lost back-to-back games now. They had Super Bowl aspirations. They're 2-3. This is a big spot. Division rival, Monday Night Football. You're home. You just fired your coach. You have a new offensive coordinator in. This, to me, is a win-or-go-home game for the Jets for a fantasy, not fantasy football situation, but for a fantasy football situation. I kind of like the win-or-go-home game because that means the offense has to play well. Garrett Wilson and Alan Lazard both looked well against the Vikings, and they had to storm back into that game. Hopefully, Brees still gets a good chunk of workload, but I'm looking to see what that Jets offense does with a new OC, with a new head coach, and with hopefully the team is fired up. These kind of situations will either fire up a team or the team will collapse. And, I think we'll be able to tell by halftime where they are.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do want to see what the new look Jets offense looks like. And then I genuinely have no idea how Buffalo will move the ball without Shakir and or James Cook in this
Josh
game.
Allen might have 100 rushing yards.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to have to be the formula, which I know they do not want to do. They've avoided that as much as possible with Joe Brady, but this is probably the biggest week 6 game in the history of football. I mean, like, seriously, primetime Monday night at MetLife last year, Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles in this game. Even though it was earlier in the year, you then have a head coach fired on a team with Super Bowl aspirations. The game's for the number 1 spot in the division, as bad as this team has been. So it is a very, very valuable football game for this early on in the season. And the big question, like Nick and I mentioned, is what does this offense now look like?
All right. Well, that is our Sunday morning live show for week 6. This may have been our longest one of the season, but thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for asking your questions. If you're still watching and you enjoyed the show, make sure you drop a like on this video. If you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so and hit that bell icon so you get notifications every time we go live or drop a new video. Our live shows are every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, available on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. Highly recommend going to YouTube to get your questions in. That is the preferred destination for us. Joe wrote ETN just fumbled. God.
And Bigsby just ran for like a 40-yard rush, it looks like.
Oh man, I wonder what Tank is owned in leagues, but he will be on our waiver wire segment on Monday. Aside from that, if we give you guys 3 shows a week, the live obviously, then 2 other shows during the week that are dropped on Tuesdays and Fridays. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel for that, or subscribe on our audio streaming platforms, iTunes or Spotify, and give us a 5-star rating and a review. We're also on social media. Make sure you follow/like the Facebook page, PrimeTimeFFPod on Twitter. If you have any other questions after the show or during the week, then Primetime Fantasy Football Podcast on Instagram. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting. Best of luck in week 6, and we'll talk to you guys on Tuesday.